Hello, guys. David Vose again. Beautiful day, man. It snowed. It literally snowed. 9th of January. Or was it? I don't know what day it was. I don't even know what day it is. Because I don't pay much attention to what day it is. But I think it's somewhere around the 9th. So probably snowed yesterday. And it snowed all night. And so, we've got maybe 4, 5, 6 inches. But it's heavy, thick snow. And that's about all we ever get anyway. It did once in a while, it'll snow a couple of feet, but usually about the next day it starts melting off and it's gone. But now it's still below freezing. There's a cold front that came in, and it's probably going to be snow on the ground for 2 or 3 days, and maybe even patches later, under a tree somewhere up in the cliffs and stuff for a week or so. But it's going to get back up in the 50s within 3 or 4 days. So then it'll start really melting. But I hope you're having a wonderful day. Because, we should always have a wonderful day. And that's what we're trying to understand. How to have a good day all the time. What is life all about? And is it possible? Is there any hope? Why are we just doing it wrong in society? Well, that's going to end up being the point, that we're doing it wrong. And, the last couple of videos, we've been kind of concentrating on a couple of things that Jesus said about the way, and also about the third eye. And we talked about how it's not necessarily talking only about some pineal gland or something, but more or less something a little deeper than that people aren't getting when they're hearing this pineal gland rhetoric. People get caught up on some idea that goes spreading around. They think they got it. Oh, there's a new teaching. You're all a bunch of idiots. We got to go and keep the law. That's why we're not being blessed. So people start reading a verse like, I came not to destroy the law, but to fulfill. And they run with that one verse because they make it sound, and it does a little bit sound like Jesus is saying, okay, if we go back to the law, that's what's going to fix it. We're not keeping the law correctly. And so just stick with the law and not the Talmud, right? That's the problem. The Pharisees were following traditions, but we got to go back to the law. Well, that's kind of true. It's kind of true because Jesus didn't mind the law and the prophets. He would always quote them. But remember what Paul said, the law is spiritual, and what we've been talking about. If we go back to the law and we say it's about the meaning of this literal message, then it's kind of like what we were saying yesterday, that you got a mathematician that has a chalkboard, and he's writing all this stuff on a chalkboard. He says, okay, this is the truth. Now, wouldn't it be ignorant for one of the students say, oh, I went to class and I learned something profound. What'd you learn? Oh, I learned the truth. Oh, really? What's the truth? Tell me. Well, I got to take you. And so you got to come with me, and you go into the classroom. There's the chalkboard. You write all this stuff down that the teacher wrote down. A bunch of lines and squiggly marks. And you see, there it is. I was told that that's the truth. And the guy's like, but what does it mean? Well, you don't have to know what it means. It's the truth. That's what we're seeking, buddy. We're seeking the truth, and I found it. There it is. Take a snapshot of that and carry it with you, because that's the truth. Put it in your pocket. Maybe your front pocket, right, where it's close to your heart. Because if we keep looking at that and saying that's the truth, and every time somebody asks you, what'll we do? We need the truth in this situation. Well, you just pull that out, right? And look at that picture and say, well, there it is. There's the truth. But see, that's not the truth. That's a bunch of lines on the chalkboard. But what was written on the chalkboard, no squiggly lines, was supposed to symbolize something that is the truth. We have determined, because we're taught some kind of language and how to read these little scribbles, we're taught these words. Okay, so let's say that we learn to read then, or we learn math. And we say, okay, that's a plus sign, that's a minus sign, that's a divide sign, these are numbers. I learned my 1, 2, 3. I learned up to 10. I know how to, add 5 and 5, and that's 10. And then, we also learned division. You say, okay, now I know the truth. Not even now. You still don't know the truth. Because what you know is, you know how to come up with some answers, like how much is 5 and 5? But it's still not really the truth, isn't it? Well, it's the truth about math. It's a language that describes math. But what if I wanted to teach you how to be happy and establish the kingdom of the Lord, and with right relations with your brother, why you're here, where you're going, who you are, and all of this? Well, I wouldn't just use math. You might need math too. You might need math. In fact, in order to know that stuff, you might need to have all this understanding and put it all together and know the truth. But what if that math taught you how to build machines, like an abacus? You built an abacus, and now you could calculate faster, right? Got to have the truth, so we need faster ways of figuring out truth. So you make abacuses. And then down the road, somebody invents a computer. Man, you got AI. Now you know the truth, right? No. Again, it is a machine that is calculating information. But that information still not the truth. It's only information on how to square a circle better, or to find out the circumference of a circle. Or if you really want to get technical, we might be able to figure out how much pressure is in a tire with some formula somebody invents. But we're still not coming up with truth. The greatest man in all the world here is maybe the scientist, who's a physicist. Man, he's got all kind of knowledge, right? He knows how far it is to a mountain, right? You ain't got a ruler that big. How would you find that out? Well, he comes up with a formula. Hold something an inch high in front of your face, 3 feet away, and then times that by this or whatever, right? This is just some kind of formula to understand something, but you're not learning the truth. What are you learning? Well, you're learning things that you don't really need to know. I don't need to know how far in math it is to that mountain, or or even how high the mountain is. Think about it. If you lived in the world and you wanted to fill your tummy, play, climb mountains, build your fort, all of that knowledge that you would need for that wouldn't really require all of that information. If you wanted to build a house the way that the world is building houses, where sheets of plywood came by 4 by 8, and you had to have nails, and you needed to know how big the nail would be to go through the wood because it's 1.5 inches thick or whatever, you might need math. But what if you didn't complicate the world so much that you tried to make all this plywood and boards, and so you needed loggers and truck drivers, and well, then you got to have a truck to bring the logs down the mountain. So that's a mechanic, and you need to know how to build a combustible engine. But hold on. Couldn't you just use an elephant? And you wouldn't need a lot of intelligence. You could just see elephants are strong and you could use them to pull your logs. What about a horse? If you needed to drive, go somewhere, you could get on a horse or you could walk. Much simpler. So in that case, the truth might be something very simple that you don't need a lot of information for. The information or the science may not even be what you're getting at. So a world that's much more simple would lead to less problems. You spend half your life in a classroom just to learn how to just to learn how to be knowledgeable enough to be a slave. That's basically what you're doing. So that's a pretty elaborate way to explain that, well, at least part of why what you write on that chalkboard is not the truth. It's only a bunch of information to control you, to build a society of slaves. However, when Moses gave the people the law, was he trying to tell them, I want you to build a temple. I want you to worship on the seventh day. I want you to wash your clothes once a week or wash your body every day. These are the laws. And if you do these things, you'll get along with everybody. We won't bother you. We won't imprison you. But if you don't do these things, we're probably going to put you in jail or, we'll oust you from the community. In order to live in our world, you got to learn all these things. Read in an undertone, day and night, the law of Moses. So you can find out how many times you've got to wash per week, how many days you've got to fast if you want this, or how many days a woman's got to be unclean when she has a flow of blood. All of that, that's the law. If we live by that law, what we've done is we've created a society of slaves. And this is why the Apostle Paul says, ye who want to be under law, do you not know it is slavery? Okay, so then why would Jesus quote from the law and say, I came not to destroy the law? Why wouldn't he want to destroy the law if that is what the law is? Well, actually, even though Jesus said he didn't come to destroy the law, he did. He came to destroy the law, and I will prove that to you. When he said, I came not to destroy, but to fulfill, remember the word fulfill means to complete. Once something is completed, it's over. The law itself was a bunch of symbols to represent something. Was it symbols to represent how we should build buildings and be under some authority and bow down and be slave? No, it wasn't about that. It was a bunch of symbols that meant something, but not that. One of the things it said is don't build a temple with hewn stone. Only use natural. Worship in a natural temple. What did Jesus do? He went into the forest. They would go into the high places, the mountains, or into the sacred groves. And this was the places that they would worship, the Melchizedek priesthood. We've shown that in many other videos. So should we build temples like Moses said? Well, probably not, because you can't build a temple with your hands and it be holy. It has to be natural. Jesus said of their temple, tear it down. Not one stone will be left upon a stone. You're condemned. Why? Because they weren't doing it right. They didn't understand the law. They had the key of knowledge, but they wouldn't go in and they didn't let anybody else go in. So that part of the law wasn't right. How about the part that says if you're going to divorce your wife, give her a bill of divorcement? No, Jesus said, no, I say unto you, that's not true. Moses was wrong. Well, how about the one that says you should hate your enemy and murder them all? Every man, woman, and child, they're your enemy. Kill them. Some of them are different. That nation, you kill them all. You don't take anything from them. You burn it down and you throw rocks in the field so they can never come back and till the soil again. You kill all their women, their children, their cities. You tear down, you burn it down, everything gone. But there were some nations under the law that you killed all the men, but if you liked some of the girls, they were kind of cute, you could take them with you. Of course, they don't like that. You just killed their husband, their children. But, we could use them to breed. So how about you just drag them off by the hair of their head, because they ain't going to go easy. Stick them in a room, because they'd run away if you didn't. Give them 30 days. Think about it. Shave their heads. At the end of 30 days, you can have sex with them. You got to calm them down. They probably scratch you and stuff if you tried to have sex with them right away. And you don't want to start beating them, because, who wants to have sex with a girl you've been beaten and she's got bruises all over? You might kill one of them or something. So leave them, put them all in a cage for a while, shave their heads, humiliate them, let them know who's boss, and then after a while, they'll get used to it. You'll tell them, look, this is the only way you're going to live, is you got to submit. You're our slave now. Once they get used to it and they submit, then you can have babies and you'll create a bunch of slaves. Now, what are you going to do with the slaves? Well, you can have them working in the fields. They'll be your slaves. You can, this is the law. Well, Jesus didn't agree with that. He didn't agree with the law. He wanted to fulfill or complete the law, which was what? Redeem us. To redeem, the law says we could be redeemed. So Jesus said, the law says we can be redeemed. Remember, the whole law really just represents something. It was a bunch of words to represent something. The temple that's holy is the universe. And all the coordinates and all the math, the 7 candles and the doors and the gates and the walls, all represented something spiritual. So when Moses wrote it down, he did not intend for them to understand it to be a blueprint for a government that would rule over us and we'd all be slaves and we'd kill everybody. The law says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but Jesus said, no. I say, love your enemy. Turn the other cheek. Forgive one another. No, Jesus did not teach the law. No, Jesus did not mean that he didn't want to destroy the law because he believed in the law. Yes, it's easy to think that that's what he meant by that one verse or the next verse that's right there in that sentence. But if you go down further, he said, but you heard it was said, Moses said in the law, but I say no. So no, that can't be the meaning of it. So that is what I'm showing you Matthew chapter 5, because I wanted to start right about here. And I wanted to share with you that when Jesus starts preaching in Matthew 5, the first thing he does is talk about who the blessed are, those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, again, they keep translating this word kingdom, but as we have shown, we shouldn't translate it the kingdom of heaven. Heaven is not the kingdom. Heaven is what rules over the earth. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The rule comes from heaven, and the will from heaven is accomplished on earth. So theirs is the source of the kingdom, or the way that the lower physical world, the paradise we live in our bodies and in our lives, they get that channel or that government that will be able to achieve all that they want. Theirs is heaven to be brought to the earth. Theirs is the blessing. Blessed are they that mourn, they'll be comforted. Blessed are the meek, they'll inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. Okay? So we're going to be filled only if we hunger and thirst for righteousness. He didn't say, blessed are the hungry, for they will be filled. He said, blessed are the hungry and those who thirst after righteousness. So he's talking in a spiritual way. Blessed are the merciful, they'll be obtaining mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see deity. How will they see deity? Well, when they were standing there and they asked Jesus about the Father, he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. In other words, the Father is not a bearded man somewhere. But whenever you look at Jesus, you are getting the expression of the Father. Therefore, what the Father is the same thing as what Jesus was. And what is Jesus? Well, he's the same thing as you. because you're in Jesus and Jesus is in the Father and the Father's in all of us. So does that make you a bearded man? No. It makes you a spirit, a mind, a being, and sort of like a ray of light from the sun. It's all the same light, but you're one ray or one spark of the divine sun. So we could go down through all of these things that we should be. And he talks about if people persecute you, you're blessed. You're the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. We could go into those, but I want to get into some more important sayings that we've discussed those before. But here we get to Jesus fulfills the law. Think not that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Now, it's so easy, as I've just said, for people to think that what he's saying is that the law is good and he's not going to ever destroy it, but we all got to keep it. But, as we said, we had to exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees. How so? Because their righteousness was not the correct kind of righteousness. And we see that as he goes down through here when he says, if the law says don't murder, they're missing the point. It's something spiritual that we're looking for. Don't be angry. Adultery, divorce. If the law were correct, then we should be able to divorce. But Jesus says, no, we can't divorce. Because whatever the truth is something beyond the law. They're missing the point. Vows. The law says we should vow by the name of Yahweh. But Jesus said, don't vow. He said, but I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is deity's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool. See, we need the earth and the heaven. Nor by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And that word is not Jerusalem, because that's not the city of the king, but it's Amun-Ra, or the holy Sol Aman, which is at Karnak. And the word there in Greek is Eros Solomon. It's not Jerusalem. Neither shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair of your head white or black. But let your communication be yes and yes, or no, no. For whatever's more than this cometh of evil. So what he just said right there is that the law of Moses is evil. Because they would swear and all of this. Make vows. But Jesus, no, that's evil. See, your law, it's evil. We got to do away with it. Bring it to an end. Fulfill it. You heard it was said in the law, hate your enemy. I say love, all the way down. Now, let's go to the next chapter. Take heed that you do not your alms before men. See, in the law, you were supposed to give alms to the widows and so forth. And he said, but I want you to understand the point of this. We're trying to help people. We're not trying to get brownie points. Right? Prayer. Under the law, people would go and have these little tassels on their garment, and every time they'd pray, they'd take another tassel, kind of like the Catholics that have the rosary beads, and they'd say the Hail Marys or something, and they'd take a bead and slide it up, because they had to have so many prayers. It was by law. Everything was by law. But he says, I don't want you to do that. I want you to understand what prayer is. First of all, you probably got to understand what deity is. He's already kind of talked about that. But if we know that the deity or the divine nature is in all of us, and that we have to have access to it, and the only way to gain access to that higher divine glory and the presence of deity is through absolute sincerity, because it is something that comes from you. You have to know what you're thinking. You can't be fooling yourself, trying to get favors with the king, but you got some stolen goods behind your back. How does the Lord know? He knows your heart. Why does it matter that he knows your heart? Because it's all about sincerity and your heart. And this is all going to lead to something. We're not just talking about how to be sincere and how to understand deity. That's the most important thing. Let's start with that. But it's something we got to learn, because we have to understand that what we're trying to get, the good things, is something that we will get. Because deity, the divine, is love. And he wants to give you all these things. So why aren't we getting all these good things? Because we don't understand what deity is. It's love and it's within you. And if you're afraid, if you're going by law and punishment and vengeance, you're going to be afraid. And this is all, the whole system is wrong. And by the way, you can understand this even better when you think of it in our day. He was talking to people that lived under the law in their day, but it's applicable to all of us today. The governments of the world, they're trying to make things better by having welfare programs or social security payments or, better economy, more laws and legislation, more police on the street for our protection, more hospitals for our health. And all of this compounds the evil, because what Jesus is saying is you're ignorant slaves following deception. You didn't get the meaning of the scribbles on the chalkboard when Moses wrote it down. He didn't mean those scribbles were what you worship. There's something deeper. The meaning, you got to learn the meaning of the law. Jesus said, go and learn the meaning of mercy and then come back to me and I'll tell you the truth. So he talks about not saying prayers with words. Oh, dear God, and oh, please help us and then help the neighbors and oh, the people in Mozambique, man, they're starving over there. And Lord, and this and that. Like the Lord don't know that the world needs all these things. Vain repetitions. It's about your heart. So we go on down about getting our daily bread. Sure, we're supposed to have bread, but only what? The daily bread. Why? Because if you're begging deity for bread that hadn't even been grown yet, Lord, please make sure that we have bread for the next several years and we need to store it up in the barn. And no, we need to concentrate about right now because the Lord provides the daily bread. And you don't have to worry about tomorrow because he's going to love you tomorrow too. You don't have to be afraid. We talk about fasting and just fasting for other people. Well, that's not the point of fasting. The point of fasting is getting control over your own appetite. So law says if you fast, you're going to get this. But the truth is, no. The truth is you've got to get control over this carnal mind, the law itself, the outer, and understand it's all about the spiritual. Then we get to the light of the body is the eye, and if the eye is single, the whole body is full of light. Now we start getting to the point here. Not necessarily talking about pineal glands or anything else, but about focusing on what is really important and love and goodness. And realizing that deity himself is love and not vengeance. Because the deity of vengeance is the deity that demands that we do this, that, and the other thing. Because in the law of Moses, which wasn't the law, it was a symbolic diagram on the chalkboard describing the world we live in. And it was telling you that there was this thing that was vengeful and hateful, and it demanded all these things from you. And it was evil. That's the point of the Old Testament. This deity that the children of Israel demanded vengeance, and they bowed down to the golden calf. They were worshiping the devil. And when the devil came to Jesus and tempted him 40 days and 40 nights and said, if you'll bow down to me, I'll give you all these things, Jesus said no. So we're looking at the Old Testament wrong. We're given a picture about this deity of vengeance, which is not about a deity, but it's about the carnal nature and the physical world, the bestial nature, that it's angry and vicious. And so that should help us understand the nature of this world. So he then begins to say, the answer is not to worry, to take no thought for your life. Why? Because the true deity loves you. And he's going to talk about this here in a minute, specifically talking about the comparison of Yahweh and his Father who is in heaven. As he does in the book of John, says, my Father's above, your Father's beneath. You worship the devil, and I worship a deity of love. So he says, if you go down here, because we'll go along here and we'll see where he says, if you ask deity for a loaf of bread, he's not going to give you a serpent, right? That's not what our loving Father would do. But under the law of Moses, when they asked that deity for bread, he got angry and he gave them serpents. So Jesus is literally showing them, you heard it was said, do this and that, but I say, no, do this and this. What Jesus was teaching is absolutely the opposite. And always keep in mind that today, even though we don't live under the law of Moses in that sense, we still are under the law of Moses. They went to a court where they were judged at the temple, a courtyard. We today still go to the greater court with people in robes. Jesus condemned that entire system, and we're going to show you then what he tells us we should do. He says that we shouldn't take thought for our life. Well, if you're living in the city and you got to get up in the morning, go to work, punch a clock, and pay bills, or your kids are going to starve, and you're taught even in your churches that you should, to be a good Christian, you should, if you don't work, you should not eat. They mean by that if you don't go and become a slave and follow society and take your children to the dulcier and get the thingy and do all the worldly things and have a car and have electricity and all the things that the world provides, then you're not a good parent. But that's not what Jesus said. Understand, he said, I don't want you to think about making sure that your kid has insurance for his, maybe he gets sick or something. Be a good parent. Make sure you have insurance and become a slave so you can pay the insurance bill. That's not what Jesus is saying. He says, take no thought. Why? Because the deity that Jesus was preaching takes care of us. Well, how come he don't take care of you then? You're hungry. You ain't got no food in your cupboard. You can't pay the rent. He ain't taking care of you. That's the problem. You're in the wrong kingdom. In the society that you're living in, you have to have these things or you'll die right away. Problem is, if you do live in that society, you're going to die anyway. Maybe in 30, 40 years, but you'll die. You'll get sick and you'll be tortured most of the time and you'll eventually die. But what Jesus was talking about, he's his heavenly Father who loves us and takes care of us and obviously wouldn't even let us die. Because we don't have to worry. So don't live in the city where you worry, right? Don't take thought for tomorrow and put money in the bank. Because we don't need money. You can't serve money and deity. So don't think about what you got to drink or yet for your body, what you shall put on. Don't you got to have clothes, nice clothes for the kids? You can't go to church, show up at church with raggedy old clothes, right? You'd be totally embarrassed and laughed out of the town, and they'd probably send the welfare people to take your children away. But Jesus said, don't worry about what you got to put on. Trust that the Lord will give you the things to wear. Well, how's the Lord? What are you going to trust? Wait till some Mormon comes to your door and gives you a box of clothes and you just got to believe in the Mormon church because if you don't, you won't have clothes? No, he's talking about the real world where there are clothes provided for you. And where is that? It's in nature. In nature, there's rocks laying around, there's caves, there's trees you could build cabins with. And like we talked about, you could take an elephant, pull down trees, you can ride horses. If we went back to nature, we'd have all the things we needed provided. And wouldn't have to worry about it. We wouldn't have to store up because there's food. Every month of the year, there's food out there growing. You don't even have to plant it. Because he says, the lilies of the field neither spin nor toil. And yet, even Solomon was not arrayed as one of these. What is he trying to tell us here, friends? It says, your life is more than meat or food, and your body's worth more than raiment. Behold the fowls of the air, they do not sow, neither do they reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you, by taking thought or worrying, thinking about it, reasoning, using your brain, calculating and planning and doing all of this, putting money in the bank for a future day, which of you who did all that can add 1 cubit to his stature? And why take ye thought for raiment, for your clothes, your designer jeans, or any kind of modern clothes? Do we have to have jeans and dresses and shirts and suit jackets? Well, Jehovah's Witnesses and Protestants seem to think it's really important that you go to church wearing your suit jacket and your white shirt. But Jesus condemns those who think that way. Listen, this doesn't sound like he wants us to live in society. So he says, why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. Yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in his glory was not arrayed as one of these. Wherefore, if deity so clothed the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? What is he talking about? He's humiliating these poor people. These are his disciples. He says, "Oh, ye of little faith, you ignorant fools. Do you not understand you're living in the wrong system? Moses said, but I say, you got the wrong deity. Your deity's the devil, man. Get out of the world. Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or where shall we be clothed? For after these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of deity." Oh, the kingdom of deity, or the source of the kingdom of deity? The heavenly throne room where all the blessings come from. Seek deity, right? Bring heaven down to earth by seeking what's important. Love and trusting and knowing that the world is run by a loving deity. And even though you look at society and you see people starving and on drugs and dying and sick, that's not his kingdom. Obviously. That law of Moses, obviously, that's not my Father's law. I tell you, love one another. Forgive one another. Don't have vengeance. No eye for an eye. Turn the other cheek. You heard Moses say, but I say no. Seek ye first his kingdom. All these other things will be added to you. Yes, we know. The Lord knows you need those things. But you're seeking those things in a world that thinks that's all that matters. Get out of that world. Go into the nature where all those things are already provided for you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. What could that mean? If you live in society, you better take thought for tomorrow. You got to make sure you've got the rent for next month. You got to make sure you've got gas for your car. You're not going to get to work. You got to plan for the future. But in the world that the Lord is running, the natural world, everything grows by itself. And just as the birds and the grass and the flowers don't have to spin or toil, but the Lord provides for them. And where are they? They're in nature. The little birdies fly around on trees that are just standing there, providing little limbs for them to sit on, and holes to make their nests, and the food's lying all over the ground. The trees drop the nuts all over the ground. And the birds don't have to spin or toil. And yet, they have food. And the lilies of the field, they don't have to spin or toil, but yet they have beautiful raiment. You know why? Because the Lord provides. And that's why he says, the Son of Man hath to know where to lay his head. It's a question. Of course he does. The Son of Man, not Jesus. Jesus isn't saying, I have some place to lay my head, but not you. No, he's saying the Son of Man, all of us. We're all the children of Adam. And of course the Lord provided for us, but it's not in Moses' law or the government of America. It's the government of nature. And the Constitution of America, by the way, is establishing that law of nature. It was designed and written down to give us the right to go back to nature, to not have people telling us what to do. So we go to the next chapter. Judge not that you be not judged. Oh, well then, how could you live in a world where you got to go to before a judge and get the gavel slammed down and go to prison? Jesus said, don't do that. How can you live in a world like the world you're living in, you Christians, and think that's okay? Why don't you follow your scriptures? Why don't you follow Jesus, the Lord, who told you do not have judges? Not only that, don't you judge anybody either, you hypocrites. For with what judgment you judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considereth not the beam that is in thine own eye? You know, Jehovah's Witnesses, I was 18 years old. They coerced me into getting baptized. I didn't understand at that young age. They only wanted me to get baptized so they could disfellowship me and tell all the congregation not to speak to me. You know why? Because I knew what they had done to my mother and father. And I was outspoken. I said, listen, that wasn't right. You got rid of my family because his dad grew a beard. So they wanted to shut me up. So they said, please get baptized. And I got baptized, and then they disfellowshipped me about immediately. And with trumped up charges, I never even committed these crimes that they claimed I did. Then they end up saying, well, you're apostate because you don't agree with us. You know, if we can't get you on that, we'll just say you're apostate. What, you don't think that's judging? Think about the insanity of people that call themselves Christians, that think they're following Jesus, who says don't judge. And then he explains what he means. Oh, you got a splinter in your eye. Let me get that out for you. But they don't even care they got a beam in their own eye. All of those people that threw me out of that church, I was just a kid, basically. I just turned 18. I've lost my whole family, and now I was going to lose them forever. And all of them were wealthy, rich people. The guy that disfellowshipped me was the president of AT&T. One of the guys had a big company, was a millionaire, had a big house on the Folsom Lake, and they were all rich. The whole congregation was rich. And that's another reason they got rid of me, because I got up on the platform and talked about being rich and how it was wrong. And the elders came and said and counseled me, you just counseled all of us. And I go, no, I just read the Bible. It was probably Jesus that was counseling you. And they didn't like that. So we got to consider the beam in our own eye, and they didn't consider that. In other words, we're all the same. We're brothers and sisters. We make mistakes. I'm sure everyone has made mistakes. We don't go around disfellowshipping people. And you don't say, oh, well, you're not repentant. How do you know? You don't know my heart. I'm sure that those elders weren't always sorry for everything they did. And I know they were all running around doing things that they probably would have disfellowshipped everybody else for. I guarantee it. You know, a lot of these people, they'll disfellowship you for, just about anything if they want to. Things that they've done themselves. So Jesus said, you hypocrite, first cast out the beam that is in your own eye, then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. But now let's go down here. 7. Ask, it shall be given to you. Seek, you shall find. Everyone who asketh shall receive. Well, that's not, what are you talking about? Go ask the pastor or the rabbi? They don't give you nothing. We've got to go to the Lord. Well, how do you go to the Lord? You know, with some Christian prayer, oh, Father, please give me what I need. It doesn't work, does it? Not unless your heart is pure. Then it doesn't matter if you say words or you don't say words, many words, few words, or no words. As long as your heart is pure and you're seeking, Jesus said, seek and you shall find. Whatever you want others to do unto you, do ye so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Oh, therefore he believed in the law and the prophets, Dave. No, he's saying that the true law, which is spiritual, and the prophets who condemned people for not keeping that spiritual law, but were legalistic and said and warned them, that's what they meant. So if you think that the law is what Jesus is talking about, then understand that he's talking about the law that was meant by the man writing the scribbles on the chalkboard, which was Moses. And if that is what we're going to call the law, which is all the words in the Torah, then obviously you're not reading the Torah correctly, because the Apostle Paul says the letter of the law is a bondage and a curse. And Jesus just told you the very same thing. He says, enter ye at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth into life, and few there be that find it. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses, I know personally, because I was one, and I know all the Protestants do the same thing. They teach that Jesus meant that most of the people in the world aren't going to make it. The Lord hates all the sinners. Oh, he hates them. And they're not going to make it. They're going to burn in hell. But you see, you've got to do everything we tell you in the church. Do everything like a slave. And maybe he'll let you into the kingdom. But see, that's not what it's saying. The narrow gate is hard to find. That's why it takes a long time. The Lord is patient. A day unto the Lord's like 1,000 years. We're going through this period of time where we're too ignorant to understand we got to love one another. Until you figure out you got to love one another and get rid of the deity of vengeance, that's the devil. Get thee behind me, Satan. Until you understand that, you can't be saved. It's a narrow gate. You got to find it. But anyone who seeks, you'll find. And eventually, you put your hand in the fire, you're going to pull it out. The Lord disciplines those whom he loves, and eventually everybody will be drawn to the Lord. That's why the Bible says he knows how to succor them that he loves, and he disciplines those whom he loves. And eventually, he desires all to attain unto repentance, unto love, and to salvation. It don't matter how long it takes. A day unto the Lord's like 1,000 years. He's got time. He'll wait. There's an appointed time. He knows that the children will grow up. And that's the end of the world, the end of this age, when the classroom's over. We all get our white robes and a crown. He says, beware of false prophets that come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. Well, friends, he's talking about society. Judges, politicians, and pastors and rabbis. They're all wicked. He says, stay away from them. You're not getting the sense of this, guys. Get out of the world. Get out of Babylon. Get out of this crazy thing called Republicans, Democrats. You don't believe me? In a minute, Jesus is going to condemn Republicans. I guarantee it. Wait till you get to that part. He says, so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. Jesus spends a whole lot of time trying to tell you don't go to some church. They're not producing the fruit of deity. They're all slaves. They're all backbiting. They're all murderers and thieves. They don't even love you. They don't understand anything. They're ignorant and they're false prophets. And you can tell that by the fruit. The fruit of what? The bad tree, which is the world that we're living in, the deity of vengeance and the government. Get out of it, guys. You can't live in the world. Oh, but Dave, let me go bury my father. I know I got to get out of the world, but just wait. My dad just died. Come on now, Dave. I'm going to go to the funeral. Jesus said, no, don't go to the funeral. What are you doing? You don't need to make vows. Just let your yes be yes, your no, no. You loved your father. Why did he die? Well, he obviously wasn't in the kingdom. Right? All we can do is hope that the Lord is loving, and he is, and he'll bring him back in the resurrection. Right now, if you don't want to die, you better get out of the world that killed your father. And all these rituals and ceremonies, and you got to have money for the casket, and what? What kind of a world that you buy land and now you got to pay taxes on it every year for the rest of your life? Get out of this world, friends. He says, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom. Oh, all these Jehovah's Witnesses are saying, Lord, Lord. Or all these Protestants saying, Lord, Lord. All these Catholics saying, Lord, Lord. Even Hindus and Muslims and all the rest. But he's saying they're not entering to the kingdom. Why? Well, now, Dave, that's just it's blasphemy to say that all Christians and Protestants and Muslims and Hindus aren't going to enter the kingdom. Well, Jesus is saying it, not me. And we can prove it because Jesus gave you a way to prove it. Take a look at Muslims. Have they entered the kingdom? No, they're out there fighting and warring and killing one another and beating their wives. Well, that's kind of bad, Dave. You're talking about Muslims there. That's kind of, what are you, racist? No, I'll tell you the same thing about Christians. They're out there going to war, murdering people, killing people, robbing people. If you're a banker, you're robbing people. If you're a doctor, you're killing people. If you're a lawyer, you're judging people. And Jesus just told you not to do any of those things, you fool. He says, build your house on a rock. Well, what house? Oh, we got pressboard, Dave. Chalkboard for the walls. We got glue guns to paste wallpaper up. This is great. About 40 years, the house will burn down and we'll build another one. It's just constant slavery. Jesus says, build your house on a rock. Go out in nature. There's rocks and there's timbers and everything's just lying around. It's easy to build a real house that'll last forever. Look at the ancient civilization, the ancient world. They built cities out of stone. They're still standing today. But of course, this is literal and spiritual. It's not only just talking about building houses. It's talking about building a kingdom. The kingdom of Christ. Build it on a rock, which is what? The truth. Let your foundation be of truth. Not these lies that people are following. Not this system. Not this government. Not this republic or this democracy. Matthew chapter 8. When he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. What was he doing in the mountain? Oh, buddy, wait till you find out. Behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, bowed down to him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou can make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him and said, I will be clean. Well, is this real? Is this true? Do you believe this? I do. You know why? Because if you live the way that the Lord provides, number one, you'll never get sick. You're eating poison in this world, you're dying. The Lord is a deity of health. He will heal you. But you've got to go unto the Lord. Jesus is the Lord. If you go unto him, and remember, he's saying that we all have that same Lord that's in him and in us. But if we go into that higher consciousness and live in a natural environment, we won't be sick. As soon as you find the Lord, he'll heal you. The Lord's in nature. He's not in this government. Moses can't heal you. Jesus can. So Jesus put forth his hand and touched him. I will be clean. And the leprosy left. Then we go down, it says, when Jesus entered into Capernaum, there came a man that was sick, and he had palsy, and he was grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. Well, the centurion asked and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say unto this man, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. And when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said unto them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great a faith, no, not in Israel. I say unto you that many shall come from the east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom, who's that? The circumcised, right? Those under the law of Moses, they're going to be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Why? Because the person who didn't know anything about this law of Moses knew by nature. The law of nature, he knew about love. He knew about goodness. You don't need the law of Moses. The Gentiles know more about truth than these people that are blind guides, leading the blind right into the pit. And he goes down to Peter's house. We can go through all of this, but I want to get to, go down here. Let's start with 9. 9:9. Jesus passed forth from thence and saw a man named Matthew sitting at the receipt of custom. And he saith unto him, Follow me. And he rose and followed him. Now, later you're going to find out that people didn't like the fact that Jesus was friends with tax collectors. Why? Because a tax collector was collecting taxes to give to a government. And Jesus didn't believe in government. Even the Jews knew that. They thought the only true government was the Jewish government, the law of Moses. And so if you were friends with Roman tax collectors, then you were an infidel. Well, why would Jesus be friends with tax collectors? Jesus didn't believe in government either. Well, notice what it says. He saw a tax collector, and he said, Follow me. What does it mean? Did he say, I want you to stay in Rome and keep taking those taxes and voting for the emperor and, what? No. He said, Come and follow me. And they'll say later on, but wait a minute, you don't even have any place to lay your head. Jesus, what are you talking about? I don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have a place in the city, but I go in the woods and I'm one with nature. Of course I've got a place to lay my head. Come follow me, see where I am. And it came to pass as Jesus sat at meat, or at food, in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. Now, wait a second. A publican? What's a publican? That's where we get the word Republicans. Because the Republicans were of the Roman government. They were Republicans. And Jesus didn't say, Oh, I'm a Roman publican. I'm a tax collector. Nobody sat down and ate with him. Why? Because notice, when the Pharisees saw it, they said to his disciples, Why eateth your master with publicans? Right? Republicans and Democrats. That's a terrible thing. And sinners. But when Jesus heard that, he said to them, They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. See, you Republicans are sick, and you need a physician, but not a physical physician. You need the Lord. You need to get out in nature. Stop being a Democrat. Stop being a Republican. Stop being a tax collector, a lawyer, all that stuff. Get out. Why is it you've been reading this all your life, you Christians, and you never noticed that your Lord and Savior told you not to be the way you are, that you're doing it all wrong? You're blind, just like the Pharisees, all of you. He says, But now go ye and learn what that meaneth. I will have mercy and not sacrifice. What? No sacrifices? What? No Republicans? They're sick. We got to help them. We got to heal them. What are we going to do? How are we going to heal them? I have come not to call the righteous, but the sinners. He's come for the sinners. He likes sinners. Why? Because he wants to heal people. He wanted to give them the truth. People who are not sinners don't need him. The problem is that all these tax collectors and Republicans need him a lot. Then he talked about, here's an interesting one. No man putteth a piece of new cloth onto an old garment, for that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse. Neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break and the wine runneth out, and the bottles perish. But they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved. What the fiddly-diddly is he talking about? Is this a law? Make sure you don't put new wine into old wineskins now. That's a law. Jesus said so. If anybody's caught doing that in the church, my goodness. Well, you know what? Even if you've got wine, we'll probably disfellowship you because, obviously you're not supposed to be drinking wine. So we just disfellowship because that's wrong. Jesus said not to do it right there. What's he talking about? Same thing Moses did. Moses wasn't telling you to do all these things. It was an example. It was a parable. And Jesus is not giving you a law here. He's telling you that you are the old wineskin. The government of the world is old, rigid, all keeping laws. But his teachings were like new wine. And it was going to ferment and expand, and it would burst that rigid system that you're in. So if you want the teachings of Christ and you're trying to get the teachings of Christ, but you want to stay in the churches or in the government or in Babylon, it's going to burst and all your teachings and all that you've learned is going to run out and you're not going to have any benefit from the teachings of Christ. If you want to benefit from what Jesus was teaching, you've got to get out of the rigid system of the world. You've got to stop being a Jew. You got to stop being a Christian. You got to stop being a Muslim. You got to stop being a Hindu. You got to stop being a Protestant. You got to stop being a Republican. You got to stop being a Democrat. You got to stop being anything. No Islam, no nothing. You go follow Jesus. And where was Jesus? Well, he was in the wilderness. And they said, what? Jesus doesn't have anywhere to lay his head. See, because they thought if he didn't have a place, an apartment in town, he was probably poor and he didn't have anywhere to live. He was homeless. But Jesus said, I'm not homeless. You're homeless. Home is out there in nature. Your kingdom is rigid and you can't receive my teachings. If this is not proof that Jesus was telling us to get out of the world, then nothing is, friends. And if you can't grasp it, I don't know if you'll ever grasp it. And by the way, once you get it, your heart will be troubled. But don't worry. The Lord will give you the strength. Once you know the truth, it will set you free. I know at first you're thinking, Dave, I can't do it. I can't go into the woods. I've got $1 million home, right? I got a Chrysler, for goodness sake. I can't just leave the Chrysler behind out and then go out in the woods and live in a cave. Well, I guess you're going to be a slave to a Chrysler the rest of your life. I'm sorry, but if you want to live for another, what? How old are you? 30, 40, 50? What do you got? 10, 20, 30, 40 years left? And then you're going to die, and then you'll be reincarnated back into another world of slavery. You just keep round and around you go. You never learn. You want to be happy. You want to live. You want to be blessed. Then seek ye his kingdom, the source of all that is good. And then you will have all these other things provided. Not Chryslers, because you don't need a Chrysler. That's like saying, yeah, we get everything. So we get slavery too, right? No, we're not going to get slavery. We don't want slavery. We don't want Chryslers. Now, I'm not saying it would be wrong to have a Chrysler if we had to go, like, remember we talked about we're going to have admirals. That means we're going to have people go overseas to pick people up because there's going to be a lot of people needing to come to the Lord's kingdom. We got to go get them. Send out the apostles. Well, how are they going to get over there? They're going to have to build a boat or something. Doesn't have to be a Chrysler boat, but it's got to be some kind of a boat, right? So yeah, there's nothing wrong with things that can be used for the kingdom. So did Jesus then mean we should go out and get money and put it in the bank? No. He is saying, just like Moses, this is a symbol of something. The things that Jesus give you, the talents, they're not actually money. His talents are more like what that word means in English. You have talents. Maybe you're a good talker or an organizer or you're a builder or you're a planter. You have knowledge of herbs. Okay, use that for the kingdom. To clothe the naked and to feed the hungry. He's not talking about we need to go into the city and have money and put it in the bank. You live out in the world, you don't need money. But I realize that you sometimes can't just do it cold turkey. But at least you need to say, look, I got to start selling all the stuff I've got, and then we'll take that money that we've got and we'll buy some land and give it to the poor, right? Might take you some time. That's why you got to get started. And you got to be prayerful and really start thinking about this. Because if you want to continue on this way, look, the world's about to go through the great tribulation. You're going to suffer. If you don't get out of Babylon, you're going to share with her in her sins and partake of her plagues. I guarantee it. Anyway, we could keep going through this, and I think we should do that. And we'll probably do one more video on this because I'm already up to about an hour, and I've got to probably bring this to a close. But you understand what we're saying. We're going to go further, and we're going to show you direct evidence that Jesus taught that we should get out of this world, and that meant the cities, the technologies, all of the rigmarole and the hogwash that you're going through here in this world, and get into nature and live off the land. I'm going to leave it here. You know the Lord loves you. His grace and his peace will be with you. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.